Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we're going to continue looking at the May-June 2022 Principles of Business Paper 2. So last video we did the same paper, but we did question 1. And so today we're going to continue by looking at question 2. And you know what to do. Like, subscribe to the channel, share the video. That's the only way you know if Learn SKN drops number 3 for this year's paper. So you know what to do. Like, subscribe, share. Alright, so let's just dig right into it. So as I said before, we did question 1 in the previous video. And so this time we are going to be looking at question number 2. And question 2 deals with contract. So that's business law. Alright, that's business law. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 4, I think, in most books. So here we go. Define the term simple contract. 2 easy marks. Define the term simple contract. And if you go to your textbook, we have a nice glossary of terms right there. And to the top here, we have a simple contract right here. So, a simple contract, any oral or written contract that does not need to be signed. So, a simple contract is any oral or written contract that does not need to be signed. And keep in mind that all contracts are legally binding. And so, the simple contract is no different. I can take you to court for saying you'll do something. That's why it is best to have it written and signed, right? So that nobody can say, I was joking or whatever, right? So that's a simple contract. It's a simple agreement. That is the next definition here. A simple contract is a simple agreement between two parties, which may be verbal, written, or implied by the conduct or action of the parties involved. So you see a more in-depth definition right here from the textbook. So a simple contract is a simple agreement between two parties, which may be verbal, written, or implied by the conduct or actions of parties involved. So if it was a specialty contract, it would have to be signed. But a simple contract, they don't have to be signed. Alright, so that's that question. So easy like that, you would have had 2 marks. Now the next one, describe 3 characteristics of a specialty contract. So that's 6 marks. 3 characteristics of a specialty contract. We already said 1 when we're defining number 1 that it needs to be signed, right? For sure, the specialty contract needs to be signed. And so here we say, in contrast, specialty contracts are more complex and formal written agreements. So they are more complex and formal written agreement. They are also known as deeds or contracts under seal, because each party to a specialty contract must, and here we go, it must be signed. So the contract, sign the contract to accept its terms and conditions. Remember, it's 6 marks, so we're looking at 2 marks each, so at least 1 sentence to explain what has to happen here. So it has to be signed by the parties involved, for sure. And that means all of us agree to the terms, and so we read it, and we signed. That's what we're saying here. We read it, we agree, so we put our own hands, our own signature on that contract. 2, seal the contract. Traditionally, contracts are sealed with a special sealing wax or corporate seal tool, which are squeezed to crimp the page. In some countries, sealing is no longer required for specialty contracts, while in others, it's tradition to seal them, right? But still, it must be sealed either way if you choose to. But as they say here, I mean, I don't know if you all ever watched those movies where when a king sends out something, they take the wax and they melt the wax, put it on the letter or the contract, the letter, and they take their seal with the wax and just dip it in and you see the imprint. But that's neither here nor there. So that's one. So remember I said traditionally you had to be sealed, but today they would have replaced the sealing with witnesses, right? So witnesses will be the ones who can vouch for you that you were party to this contract. And so today we have replaced sealing with witnesses. So a specialty contract needs to be witnessed when you decide to sign the contract. You can't sign it just like that by yourself and then you go and say somebody was forcing you or whatever. It has to be witnessed when it is being signed. And of course, the next one is that the contracts must be delivered. So deliver the contract to the parties involved so that each one has an identical copy of it. So you have to deliver the contract to each party involved. And next characteristic is that, of course, it must be written. It must be written. I mean, if you're going to sign it, it has to be written. So right there we have, well, that's 4. We have 4 characteristics. Like I said, 2 marks each, so deliver. So each party must receive an identical copy of the contract. It must be delivered to each party. The contracts must be sealed, or witnesses must be there to see the signing of the contract. The contract must be signed to show that you have read and you agree to all of the terms of the contract. And so those are some characteristics of the specialty contract. Okay, B. Outline what is meant by each of the following conditions of offer and acceptance relating to a contract. And that's 2 marks each. So we all know there are some characteristics of a contract. So all contracts must display the following essential characteristics. There must be an offer made, that offer must be accepted, and that whole contract must contain consideration, that is that every party must benefit in some way, shape, or form. That contract must be legal, and all parties must be competent when signing that contract. But the question is asking us to outline each what is meant by offer and counter offer. So let's go. So offer. When various parties choose to enter into a contract, the first thing that occurs is an offer. An offer is an indication of a person's willingness to enter into a contract on terms that he or she has put forward. So an offer is a person's willingness to show that, look, I'm ready to enter this contract. So I'm offering you something. Whether I'm offering something for sale between me and you, whether I'm offering you my services, whatever. But an offer is an indication of your willingness to enter into a contract on the terms that you have put forward, right? So remember, it is what you have put forward. So that's an offer. Or, put another way, an offer is a proposal made by one party to another party, establishing his or her willingness to enter into a legal binding agreement. The basis of the offer will help to form the contract. So again, it's you showing your willingness to enter into a contract based on your terms. That's an offer. But remember, a contract is not made until there's acceptance. But between offer and acceptance, you can also have what we call a counter offer. But what we have to understand here is that within any contract, there is someone you call the offerer. That's the person who's making the initial offer. And then there's an offeree. That's someone who you are sending out the offer to, right? So let's say there are 2 persons, and I want to make a contract and Bob wants to make a contract with Steve. Bob is the offerer, and Steve is the offeree. So I'm going to give a proposal to Bob. Now if Steve doesn't like my offer, Steve can what we call counter offer. Meaning, so that can be kind of like negotiating. So if Steve doesn't like the proposal, Steve can then say, okay, no, I would prefer doing it this way. And so that's what we call a counter offer. So Steve turn around now and make you, the offerer, a different proposal. And that's what we call a counter offer. That's where the offerer becomes the offeree. Where the offeree turns around and becomes the offerer. So the offerer now turns around and becomes the offeree because the person you're making the proposal to decided, okay, I don't like those terms. So here are my terms now, right? And that can be part of negotiating the contract. And so that's what you call a counter offer, where the offeree doesn't accept the first proposal, but they themselves propose something in return. And so once that happens, the original proposal is terminated, and the new thing on the table is what the offeree has now offered the offerer. And so a counter offer terminates the original offer and therefore becomes the new offer, right? So they have a scenario right here. I offer to sell you 100 pounds at $5 per pound. That's that gentleman making an offer to that lady. The lady said, no, that is too high, but I can buy the 150 pounds at $4 per pound. That's the counter offer right there. And so the contract only is nailed in when somebody agreed to the other person's offer. So there's a counter offer right there, $4 per pound. Now the man gonna say, okay, I want offer to sell you 100 pounds now for $5. So he reduced the amount. She said, that sounds fair. I agree. And so the contract is made right there. Right? It's made right there. So the counter offer is where the person who received the original proposal did not accept it, but they made their own offer, their own proposal in return. And that's a counter offer. And so once you outline those two, then you would get your 2 marks for each. Okay, C. Briefly explain one way in which a contract may be terminated or discharged. And we have a number of ways in which a contract can be terminated or discharged. And so there are a number of ways in which a contract can be terminated or discharged. So discharge simply means that the contract has come to an end. And there are a number of ways in which a contract can come to an end. Of course, you can look at my full video on contracts to get a better understanding for that one. So here we go. By performance, by death, by lapse of time, by impossibility or frustration, by agreement, and by breach of contract. But the question says to briefly explain. So we're going to briefly explain all of them so you can choose your one. Okay, so performance. So that simply means that both parties have fulfilled the contractual obligation. So everything went smooth. Both parties did what they're supposed to do, and so the contract is over, the contract is end. Simple by that. Performance. I do what I had to do, you pay me, contract is over, everybody go to separate ways. So that's by performance. Then we have by breach of contract. This means that one party failed to hold up their end of the bargain. One party fails to perform their contractual obligation. So the contract is terminated. It was not performed. Right? And so that's the breach of contract. So you did something outside of the agreement that caused the contract to come to an end. So this is when one party fails to perform a contractual obligation. And then we have by agreement. So both parties say, okay, let's agree to end this contract. Let's rip it up. And so both parties agree to end the contract before anything in the contract is carried out. So instead of anything being performed, they say, okay, both of us come together and we rip up this contract, we move on from here, and that's by agreement. Then you have by impossibility or frustration, which simply means that sometimes, due to circumstances, you just cannot perform what the contract wants to perform. And so that way the contract comes to an end. Right? For example, if you have to have a contract with someone, and let's say you get in an accident or earthquake or hurricane or something, and the contract cannot be fulfilled because it's impossible at this point, then the contract comes to an end like that, right? So that's the next way to do it as it relates to, you know, imagine you say you're going to ship something and then the boat sink, hurricane come, clean up something. Those are things you can't control. And so because of that, the contract will come to an end. Maybe insurance will help to cover all whatever you might lose, but that is for that contract, by impossibility or frustration. Then we have lapse of time, meaning that the contract might have a specific time period in which it should be performed, but if that time frame is gone, then the contract may have run its course, and so because of lapse of time, the contract is terminated, right? A contract should be performed within a specific period of time known as a period of limitation. The contract itself may specify this time period, or period of limitation may be specified by law relating to various types of contract. Once the period has elapsed, the contract is terminated. And by death, if one party dies in the contract, then the contract is terminated. As simple as that, right? And so those are the simple ways the contract can either be discharged or terminated, right? And so again, there's a video in depth looking at contracts. Take a look at that video for a better understanding. Next question. Doris offers to sell Mark one of her cars. She intends to sell him the red 5-year-old Tomato XL but Mark thinks she is selling him the yellow 3-year-old Scotch Bonnet Deluxe, which he told Doris he liked very much. Mark sent his mechanic to check out the car. The mechanic returns and tells him that the car is in very good working condition. Mark pays Doris for the car by way of the manager's check. However, when the car is delivered, it is a Tomato XL instead of the Scotch Bonnet Deluxe. Mark is convinced that Doris tricked him and plans to sue her. Okay, we got that little case study right there. State the legal term used to describe the situation that has occurred between Doris and Mark. And so the best one here is, of course, there's some misrepresentation going on right there. And so if you look in the textbook, you see here, reasons for contracts are voidable. So we have misrepresentation. This is where an important statement made by one party that is not true. Misrepresentation may be innocent, which is made in the belief that it is true, or it can be fraudulent, that is, with knowledge that it is untrue. Misrepresentation may also arise from silence, meaning failure to disclose the information. And so this one here might be the better example of misrepresentation, where it's from silence, meaning failure to disclose the information. So in this case, Doris failed to disclose the fact of which car she is selling, whether it is the red or the yellow. So she didn't tell Mark anything. And so we have here misrepresentation taking place. And then the question asks, suggest 3 actions that could have been taken by Doris or Mark to prevent the situation from occurring. Of course, 1, Doris should have outlined which car is for sale. So make it clear which car is for sale. That's 1. And of course, Mark on his end should have asked which car is for sale. Mark need to do his due diligence also. Even the mechanic could have asked which car is for sale. So 2 things right there. Doris could have said which one is for sale clearly. Mark could have asked which one is for sale. So those are 2 things that they could have done. And Mark again, instead of sending the mechanic, right, Mark should have gone himself to see the car along with the mechanic, and so then he would have known which car the mechanic inspected, right? So Mark kinda was a little negligent in some cases, and Doris could have done her part to say what is really going on, right? So all of those could have happened for the situation to be a little better. So Doris could have disclosed which one exactly is for sale. Mark could have asked which one is for sale and say which one he wants to buy, and then Mark should have gone and see the car himself instead of sending his mechanic. And before paying any money, you got to know what you're getting, man. You have to know what you're getting. So you trust your mechanic, you trust Doris, but you yourself ain't gone to see. So Mark made some errors like that also. So the last question asks, recommend 2 ways in which the situation could be settled without Mark taking legal action. 1, of course, Doris can exchange the cars. That's one way in which it can be settled. Doris can exchange the cars, give Mark the 1. And 2, of course, Doris can return the money to Mark, right? So it's either she can give him the car that he thought he was buying, or she can give him back the money, and then we try and settle that way without going to the court, right? Give him back the money, exchange the cars, either way, right? So simple like that, we would have covered that question. So you know what to do. Again, like, subscribe, hit the bell, so you know when we drop the answers for question 3 for the May-June 2020 POB Paper 2. Alright, so that's all folks. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and stay tuned.